Imagine being given the mission to lead an entire people to a promised land, knowing that the path would be full of unimaginable challenges and powerful enemies. This is the story of Joshua, a man whose unwavering faith and courage turned God's promise into reality. Your journey is an extraordinary example of how trusting the Lord can move mountains or even tear down walls. After Moses' death, Joshua was chosen to guide the Israelites toward the land of Canaan, the land that God promised to Abraham centuries before. Genesis 12:7. It was not a simple task. The people of Israel faced not only the vastness of an unknown territory, but also heavily armed nations and fortified cities. However, God gave Joshua a promise that would be the basis of all his leadership. Did I not command you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you, wherever want you to walk. Joshua 1:9. With this assurance, Joshua took command. He knew that his strength lay not in human military skills or strategies, but in divine direction. Before moving forward to conquer Canaan, he sent 2 spies to Jericho, the first major city they would encounter. The spies were sheltered by Rahab, a woman whose heart had already been touched by the fear of God. She believed that the God of Israel was the true God, and risked her life to protect the spies, in exchange for a promise of salvation for herself and her family. This unlikely alliance reveals that God works in even the most unexpected circumstances, using unlikely people to fulfill his plans. Joshua 2:11-13. Upon returning, the spies reported that the people of Jericho were terrified as they knew about the power of the God of Israel. This encouraged Joshua and the Israelites to prepare to cross the Jordan River, a natural barrier that separated the desert from the Promised Land. And then, one of the most impressive miracles in the Bible happened. God instructed that the Ark of the Covenant be carried forward, and as soon as the priests touched the river, the waters parted, allowing all the people to pass on dry land. Joshua 3:15-17. It was a remarkable moment, demonstrating that God's presence always comes before his promises. This episode reminds us that God acts in ways that defy human logic. Not only does he keep his promises, but he also does so in ways that strengthen our faith and display his glory. And speaking of promises, have you ever thought about how you can live more confidently when you rely on them? If you are enjoying this inspiring story, take this moment to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share with someone special who needs to hear this message of faith. After crossing the Jordan, Joshua knew that the next challenge would be to conquer Jericho. This city was known for its impenetrable walls, a symbol of strength and security for its inhabitants. To the Israelites, it seemed impossible to defeat such a well-defended fortress. But God had a plan, and, as often happens in our lives, his plan seemed strange and even illogical to the human mind. God instructed Joshua to do something that seemed more ritual than military strategy. The people were to march around the walls of Jericho once a day for 6 days in complete silence, while the priests blew their trumpets. On the 7th day, they were to march 7 times, and at the end, give a great shout of victory, Joshua 6:2-5. Can you imagine the tension in the air? Day after day, the Israelites obeyed, while the inhabitants of Jericho probably watched them with contempt or fear, not understanding what was coming. This silence, followed by obedience, teaches us something profound about faith. Trusting God does not mean understanding all of his ways, but following them even when they don't make sense to us. This is how God calls us to act, trusting that he is faithful to do the impossible. On the 7th day, the Israelites followed the instructions to the letter. When they finally gave the cry of victory, the walls of Jericho collapsed before them, without them having to raise a single weapon against them. Joshua 6:20. This spectacular victory marked the beginning of the conquest of the Promised Land. Once again, God has shown that his promises do not fail and that he fights for those who trust in him. The fall of Jericho was just the beginning. After this miraculous victory, the people of Israel were filled with confidence, but Joshua knew that the journey would still be long and full of challenges. The next target was the small town of Ai, and the Israelites were convinced it would be an easy victory. However, something unexpected happened. Israel's army was defeated. Joshua 7:4-5. This defeat was a shock to Joshua and the entire people and led Joshua to seek the Lord in prayer, asking why this had happened. God revealed that the problem was within the camp itself. Someone had disobeyed his orders by taking condemned objects during the conquest of Jericho. This was a direct violation of the covenant between God and the people, and the consequence was severe. The disobedience of Achan, the culprit, brought defeat and suffering to the entire nation. Joshua 7:10-12. This episode reminds us that our actions have an impact not only on our lives, but also on those around us. It also shows us that God takes holiness very seriously. After dealing with the sin in the camp, Joshua led the people against Ai again, this time with God's blessing. The city was conquered, and the people's confidence was restored. This marked a crucial moment in Israel's history. They learned that victory only comes when they fully obey God's will. As they advanced, Joshua faced another challenging situation. The Gibeonites, one of the nations of Canaan, tricked the Israelites into making a peace alliance with them. Dressed in old clothes and carrying stale bread, the Gibeonites pretended to be travelers from distant lands and begged for a treaty. Without consulting God, Joshua and the leaders of Israel agreed to the covenant. Joshua 9:14-15. Later, upon discovering the deception, Joshua kept his word, but the situation was a powerful reminder of the importance of seeking God's guidance in all decisions. Have you ever been in a situation where you trusted your own understanding and things didn't go as expected? This story encourages us to depend on God, even in the smallest details. And if this reflection is touching your heart, how about sharing this message with someone? Don't forget to like the video, comment on what inspires you most, and subscribe to the channel to continue following transformative stories. As Joshua's campaign progressed, God continued to move mightily. One of the most impressive moments was the battle against a coalition of 5 kings who united against Israel. When the enemies were about to flee, Joshua prayed a bold prayer and asked the Lord for the sun and moon to stand still so that the army of Israel could complete the victory. God heard Joshua's prayer and made the sun stand still in the sky, prolonging the day until the enemies were completely defeated. Joshua 10:12-14. It was an unprecedented miracle, which showed not only God's power over nature, but also his willingness to intervene on behalf of his people. The book of Joshua tells us that, throughout his life, he led Israel in many battles, and God delivered the promised land to the people, as he had sworn to their ancestors. After years of fighting, the territory was divided between the tribes of Israel, fulfilling the promise made by God to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But even after so many victories, Joshua knew that the most important battle was not physical, but spiritual. Towards the end of his life, Joshua gathered the people and gave a powerful speech. He reminded everyone that it was the Lord who gave them victories, and challenged them to remain faithful to the pact with God. His final words are striking. "Choose today whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. This declaration was not only a personal commitment, but also a call for all people to place God at the center of their lives. The story of Joshua is a lesson in faith, courage, and obedience. It reminds us that God is faithful to fulfill his promises, but it also challenges us to live in holiness and trust him in all circumstances. Just like Joshua, we are called to face our giants with faith and to commit to serving the Lord, no matter the cost. As you end this journey, think, which walls in your life need to be surrendered to God? What steps of faith do you need to take today? And remember, just like Joshua, you are not alone. The Lord promises to be with you wherever you go. If this message spoke to you, take the opportunity to share it with friends and family, like it, and leave your comment. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring biblical stories full of wisdom and inspiration. May God bless your journey.